Another layer to that onion. A law enforcement special agent doubling down on a stunning claim in the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. He says Murdaugh blurted out, "I did him so bad," when asked about his son's murder 3 days after the killings. But there is some disagreement on whether Murdaugh actually says "I" or "they" in the videotaped interview. Criminal defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh joins us on that in just a moment. But we begin with Jonathan Serry. He's got more details on what happened in court today. What is so important, Jonathan, about what Alex Murdaugh actually said?
Yeah, well, the prosecution's trying to show that he slipped up. This second police interview, Alex Murdaugh is talking about his deceased son, Paul. Prosecutors want to show that he slipped and revealed, quote, "I did him so wrong." But the defense suggests he was misquoted and actually said they did him so wrong. And in cross-examination, they played the recording at 1/3 speed to see if the state investigator would hear it any differently.
So bad. We did it so bad.
Did you hear "they" then?
No, sir, I did not.
No change in his testimony, no change in the quote. Body cam video shows agents with SLED, the state law enforcement division, recovering shells from the grounds around Murdaugh's hunting lodge that investigators say are consistent with the types of ammunition used to kill his wife and son. But in cross-examination, Murdaugh's attorneys were about to point out some key evidence is still missing.
Have you ever found the murder weapons, to your knowledge?
Objection, Your Honor. That's not outside the scope of his knowledge.
Objections overruled.
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
This afternoon, a representative from Verizon and also an analyst of cell phone data testified as prosecutors try to use cell phone data to piece together a timeline of the last phone calls and texts of the victims in this case. Back to you, John.
Jonathan Serry in our Southeast Bureau for us with the latest. Jonathan, thank you. Sandra?
Let's bring in Mark Eiglarsh now, a criminal defense attorney. Mark, glad to have you here to bring us up to speed on this trial. So many in this country are watching how this plays out. It is the twists and turns that have boggled those who have been watching it closely. What we learn next is anybody's guess, but I'll put to you the question the AP asks in its headline on all of this morning. Through sobs, did Alex Murdaugh say he killed his son?
It's possible, but I assure you his liberty shouldn't hinge upon whether a prosecution witness thinks he heard "I" or "they." That is weak, and as much as you don't like this guy, and he's very easy to dislike with all that he's done, your own family member's liberty, especially for a case like murder, should never hinge upon whether he said "I" or "they." It should hinge upon forensic evidence. It should hinge upon whether they've discredited his word, whether he had a motive even though they don't have to prove motive. Those are the things that should lead to proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Wow. Well, we do know there's a lot of evidence so far that we can note and put on our screen to take our viewers through this. We've got the 911 call, of course. That was absolutely heart-wrenching to hear. That was played out in court. There's the body cam footage from the responding officers. There's the recorded statements that Murdaugh gave to law enforcement, the ballistics evidence that did suggest that this was a family gun that was involved. There's also GPS locations of the cell phone that he had, the gunshot residue. We've heard a lot from that courtroom. So what key pieces of evidence are actually missing at this point?
I'm waiting to hear about whether there was gunpowder residue found on this alleged raincoat that was at his parents' house, the place that he claims he was when he wasn't killing his precious wife and child. I want to hear more about the bloodstains. Is that consistent with someone who went over and rendered aid, or is it consistent with someone who used two very significant high-powered weapons and got blood splatter on them as a result? That's what I'm looking for.
Very interesting stuff. Real quick, this was Nancy Grace yesterday on the bombshell that was revealed in that courtroom on the defense claiming evidence was mishandled at the scene. Here was her thought on that.
There was evidence evidence that was muddled in that dog pen where the victim's blood was found. People were walking around, but that doesn't negate the fact that Alex Murdaugh was there at the scene, caught in a Snapchat video by his son.
How big of a deal was that to you, the mishandling that apparently happened at the scene here?
It could be a colossal thing. You know, Nancy minimizes it in favor of the prosecution. I adore her, but I find myself disagreeing with her. When you're analyzing whether he was there, they look to the forensic evidence. And the first thing they do is, can we rely upon it? And if they can prove, and I mean they, meaning the defense, that somehow it was contaminated in any way, like they did in the OJ case, then you can't rely upon it. So don't minimize it. It's significant if, in fact, this scene was contaminated.
That's a big deal. So we're going to continue to watch what comes from that courtroom as the week goes on. The charges against him, 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of possession of a weapon, and he could face 30 years to life in prison. We'll be watching all of it. Mark Eiglarsh on that for us. Mark, thank you. John?
Sandra, crime ravaging the city of Chicago, and Mayor Lori Lightfoot is in the city streets.